Watch. In the previous episode, children vanished in the fire. No remains, no answers, just a silence that stretches for decades. Now, a new letter arrives, a strange portrait, a signature no one can explain, a face that seems hauntingly familiar, numbers that defy interpretation, fingerprints that shouldn't exist, and a voice, 40 years later, speaks a forgotten name. Too many coincidences, far too late to call it chance. New details appear, but each one feels like a trap. The truth is close, yet always out of reach. The main question now is not where they are, but why they still remain silent. Morris, the Fayetteville fire chief who oversaw the Sadr house fire, had family ties to an Italian crime syndicate. His wife, Maria Morris, was the cousin of Salvatore Aragusa, leader of the local Mafia family. This connection wasn't secret in the small town, but before the tragedy, no one saw it as an issue. To the Sadrs, Morris was seen as an honest public servant, a man who had simply married for love, a girl of Italian descent. But after the fire, Morris's behavior raised questions. He refused to discuss the details of that night and reacted aggressively to any attempts by the Sadr family to get more information. When George Sadr asked for permission to conduct his own searches in the ruins, Morris forbade it, claiming the site was too hazardous, accessible only to official personnel. But just a week after the fire, Morris authorized a construction crew to clear the land for rebuilding. Strange how the area was safe for contractors, but dangerous for grieving parents. The official story of the 8-hour fire department delay blamed mechanical problems with the city's only fire engine. But investigations later revealed that Morris actually had other options that night. In neighboring Beckley, just 20 kilometers away, another fire station was fully operational. According to procedures at the time, departments were supposed to assist each other in serious fires. Beckley Fire Chief James Watson later confirmed that nobody reached out for help that night. "If we had gotten the call, we could have arrived within 30 minutes, Watson stated. Furthermore, evidence showed Fayetteville's fire engine was in working order. Mechanic Robert Haynes, who maintained the vehicle, claimed he inspected it just before the fire and found no problems. "The engine ran like clockwork," Mechanic Haynes insisted. "I don't know what problems they claim to have had. Maybe they didn't know how to start it in the cold, but -10 degrees isn't critical for equipment from 1945. Several Fayetteville residents stated they saw the fire truck driving around town throughout the night of December 24th to 25th. If the engine was truly broken, how could it be out on the streets? Night watchman John McGregor saw the fire truck at 3 a.m. near the industrial district. It was moving slowly, no sirens or anything, but the engine sounded fine, he recalled. Frank Davis, owner of a 24-hour gas station, also reported seeing the fire truck at 4 a.m., stopping for fuel. The firefighters seemed calm, no sense of urgency. These accounts conflicted with the official explanation of mechanical failure. In reality, the fire truck seemed operational, but for some reason never made it to the burning Sadr house. When George Sadr pressed Chief Morris for answers, he became aggressive and threatening. "Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong," Morris warned, "or you'll regret it." Sheriff Robert Morris, a namesake, not a relative of the fire chief, conducted what looked more like an imitation of a real investigation than a genuine probe. Witness interviews were superficial. Many possible witnesses were never found or questioned. Physical evidence was never sent for analysis. Theories of arson and child abduction were ignored. Even the sheriff's approach to witness reports about unfamiliar cars near the Sadr house before the fire was odd. The information made it into the official record, but no attempt was made to trace those vehicles or their owners. When the Sadr family tried to obtain copies of the investigation documents, they were told many files were lost or accidentally destroyed during an archive reorganization. Sheriff Morris blamed inadequate investigation on a lack of resources and staff. "Small town like ours, not much money for real investigations," he explained. But locals remembered livestock thefts receiving far more thorough scrutiny than the disappearance of 5 children. In the weeks after the fire, unfamiliar men appeared in town, seeking details about the tragedy. Witnesses described them as middle-aged men in dark suits, speaking with slight Italian accents. They visited potential witnesses, urging them not to discuss what they'd seen the night of the fire, their requests barely disguised threats. Farmer William Green, who lived near the Sadr home, described what happened. "2 men in a black sedan came to see me. They said the Sadr family would be better off if I forgot seeing strange cars near their house. They hinted it would be wise for me to keep quiet." Local shopkeeper Charles Wilson received a similar visit. "They told me if I talked about the children I'd seen after the fire, my store could burn down," Wilson recalled. But the bus driver James McDonald suffered the worst. He was the first to report seeing the children on the morning of December 25th. After strangers visited him, he retracted his statement and claimed he'd been mistaken. "They told me they knew where my family lived," McDonald explained. "I have 3 small children. I can't risk their lives." Coroner Six became a primary target after his initial ruling that no children's remains were found in the ruins, supporting the abduction theory and casting doubt on claims the children died in the fire. In January 1946, neighbors of Six began noticing late-night visitors with black cars and tinted windows staying for hours at his home. Six's wife Mary appeared frightened and avoided neighbors. Their children no longer played outside, leaving only under adult watch. Six himself changed. He lost weight, seemed nervous, glanced over his shoulder. Colleagues observed he drank more and slept badly. In February, a turning point occurred. Six was stopped by 2 unknown men while driving home from work. They took him away for several hours and returned him later. The next day, Six revised his Sadr report, now stating high fire temperatures could have incinerated the children's remains. Friends and colleagues barely recognized Six afterwards. He became withdrawn, shunned talk of the Sadr case, and refused to explain his report's changes. By spring 1946, Fayetteville was gripped by fear. Residents avoided the Sadr family, rejected helping the search. The fear was not just rational, a dread of criminal retribution, but also deeply mystical. In the Italian community, whispers arose about a curse over all connected to the Sadrs. "Whoever helps the cursed becomes cursed," superstitious women murmured. Criminals leveraged these prejudices for psychological pressure. Those who saw suspicious events at the fire or unfamiliar faces near the Sadr home understood their testimonies might be dangerous. Local priest Father O'Brien tried to reassure his parishioners, explaining that Christian faith does not recognize curses. But even among devout Catholics, ancient fears persisted. "People come to confession and admit they're afraid to help the Sadr family," he recounted. "They know it's a sin, but fear outweighs faith." In March 1946, Sheriff Morris officially closed the Sadr fire case. The report read, "The fire occurred for undetermined reasons. 5 children perished in the flames. Investigation closed." Such haste was remarkable. Usually, cases involving the deaths of children were investigated for months. Experts brought in from other towns, every possible angle explored. But the Sadr case was shut down after 3 months. No independent experts, no serious effort to investigate kidnapping theories. The Sadr family fought for a review, petitioning the state prosecutor and federal authorities. But all they received were formal replies saying the case had been thoroughly investigated. It felt like officials at every level wanted the tragedy forgotten, as if an unwritten order existed not to bring it up. George Sadr realized official channels were closed. He would have to search for his children himself, relying only on his own resources and the help of a few friends who didn't fear curses or threats. The wall of silence had won the first round, but the Sadr family was not giving up. Their search for truth was just beginning. After the official closure in March 1946, Jenny Sadr knew only she could continue the search for her children. The 39-year-old mother of 5 missing children became her own detective, dedicating her life to the quest. Jenny had no formal training, knew little of criminal investigation, but she had what officials lacked: absolute certainty her children were alive. "A mother can feel through her heart," she said. "If my children were dead, I'd know it. I feel them out there, waiting for me to find them." This maternal intuition powered her 40-year investigation. Jenny transformed her home into a headquarters for her search, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, tracking suspicious strangers. She studied everything on child trafficking, connected with families of other missing children, and built an informant network nationwide. By spring 1946, Jenny launched her own investigation. She methodically spoke to every resident, recorded statements, mapped sightings of suspicious cars and people. Most neighbors were afraid to speak openly, but Jenny inspired trust. Women spoke with her more readily than with detectives. Gradually, she assembled information ignored by police. It turned out unfamiliar people regularly appeared near the Sadr home before the fire, arriving in different cars, photographing the house, observing the family's routines. They paid particular attention to the children, when they left for school, when they returned, where they played. It resembled the preparation for a kidnapping. Jenny compiled descriptions of all suspicious individuals and vehicles, ending up with a list of 15 people and 8 cars possibly linked to the case. She brought this list to the sheriff, but he dismissed it. "Just the anxious fantasies of a distraught mother," Morris declared. In summer 1946, George and Jenny Sadr hired private detective C.C. Tinsley from Charleston, an experienced investigator with a reputation for finding missing persons. Tinsley took on the case with determination. He reviewed all the materials, interviewed witnesses, and traced connections between suspicious individuals. Within 1 month, the detective gathered more information than the official investigation had in 3 months. It turned out several people from Jenny's list were indeed linked to criminal groups. Some of the vehicles belonged to known thieves involved in stolen goods trade. Tinsley tracked down an organized group that could be responsible for child abductions. He was preparing for a major breakthrough in the case, but suddenly the detective disappeared. On August 3rd, he never returned to his office after meeting an informant. His car was found abandoned on a rural road, and no one ever saw Tinsley again. The Charleston police conducted a formal inquiry into the detective's disappearance, but found no results. The official version claimed an accident or suicide. But the Sadr family knew Tinsley had become a victim of the same people who kidnapped their children. The private detective had gotten too close to the truth and paid dearly. After intense media coverage of the case, the Sadr family began receiving letters and calls from all over America. People reported sightings of children resembling the missing Sadrs. Jenny personally answered every letter and checked each claim. Most turned out to be false alarms, but some contained intriguing information. Particularly many reports came from states with large Italian diasporas: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Witnesses described groups of children acting strangely, silent, scared, closely watched by adults. A family from the Bronx reported 5 children living nearby in a foster home. The kids appeared in the winter of 1946, allegedly after their parents died in a car crash. Neighbors noted odd behaviors. Jenny traveled to New York and met the family. The children did resemble her own, but the similarity was superficial on closer inspection. Each trip cost money, which the Sadr family had little of, but Jenny was ready to spend every penny, sell their house, and go into debt, anything to find her children. In desperation, Jenny turned to mediums and psychics. She was not superstitious, but had exhausted traditional methods. The first medium, from Pittsburgh, claimed he could communicate with the missing children's spirits. During a séance, he said he saw the children alive, living in a big city by the ocean. "They are safe but cannot come home," the medium said. "Someone holds them against their will, but causes them no harm." This message brought hope, but gave no concrete leads. Other psychics gave conflicting accounts. Some saw the children alive, others dead. Jenny soon saw most mediums as frauds, preying on grief. Yet she continued her visits, hoping to find a genuine one with real powers. One psychic gave surprisingly accurate information about the Sadr family, details he could not have known from public sources. He described the layout of the burned house, named the pets, and recounted children's habits. "Your children are alive," said the man, "but they are very far from home. They were taken by people who traffic children. Search down south, where many Italians live." This information matched Jenny's own suspicions of Mafia involvement in the disappearance. In 1952, 7 years after the tragedy, Jenny made a decision that made the Sadr case known nationwide. She installed a huge billboard on the highway near Fayetteville. The board displayed photographs of the 5 missing children, a brief description of their disappearance, and a promised reward of $5,000 for information leading to their recovery. This sum was enormous by 50s standards, more than a year's salary for a laborer. The Sadr family spent all their savings on the billboard's production and installation. The board stood on a busy stretch of Highway 19, seen daily by thousands of motorists. Every traveler saw the faces of the missing children and a short story of their fate. It was a desperate attempt to draw attention to a case the authorities wanted to forget. Jenny hoped that someone driving by would recognize the children and report their whereabouts. The billboard stood for 20 years and became a local landmark. Journalists wrote articles about it, photographers took pictures, and travelers would stop to read the Sadr family story. The billboard sparked mixed reactions. Some admired the mother's courage and relentless hope. Others claimed Jenny could not accept loss and lived in illusion. Local authorities disliked the billboard. It reminded people of an unsolved case, cast doubt on the police's competence, and invited unwanted media attention. Several times, attempts were made to remove the billboard under various pretexts: advertising violations, road safety concerns, local complaints. But Jenny fought off every attack. She studied the law, hired a lawyer, and rallied public support. The billboard remained as a symbol of maternal love and unyielding will. Every year, on the anniversary of the tragedy, Jenny visited the billboard and laid flowers. It became a ritual of remembrance that kept media focus and public interest alive. In 1968, 23 years after the tragedy, the Sadr family received a mysterious letter that briefly revived hope. Inside the unmarked envelope was a photograph of a young man and a note. "Louis Sadr, I love brother Frankie, Lil boys at 90132 or 35. The man in the photo bore some resemblance to the youngest Sadr son, Louis, who was 8 at the time of disappearance. By 68, he would have been 31. Jenny was stunned. Maybe it was a sign from her son, who could not contact the family openly but wanted to let them know he was alive. The family asked the FBI to examine the photo and find the letter's sender, but federal agents declined, saying they lacked sufficient grounds for investigation. A private detective analyzed the photo and concluded the man could indeed be a grown Louis Sadr. But with incomplete data, locating him was impossible. The letter from Kentucky gave new impetus to the search. Jenny realized she needed to look not for children, but for adults who might be unaware of their true origins. She began traveling across the country, visiting cities with large Italian communities. In every town, Jenny contacted local newspapers, published ads, and met with people of the right age. She carefully studied adoption cases from 1945 to 1950, hoping her children might have been placed in foster homes under new names. Jenny met dozens who could have been her children. Some were searching for their biological parents and hoped to find them in the Sadr family. but none turned out to be the real Sadr children. Without DNA testing back then, identification relied on resemblance and memories. The most painful encounters were with those who closely resembled the missing children, but proved to be strangers. Every meeting rekindled hope and ended in heartbreak. Despite official skepticism, the Sadr story touched many hearts. People nationwide sent letters of support and small monetary donations to aid the search. Other parents of missing children supported Jenny actively. They understood her pain and admired her courage. Gradually, an informal network of families formed, helping each other in their searches. Journalists regularly wrote about the Sadr case, especially on tragedy anniversaries. Each article brought new tips from people who claimed they had seen or known something about the missing children. True crime TV shows featured the Sadr story in their episodes. Each broadcast generated dozens of calls, but most were dead ends. Jenny answered every letter and investigated every lead. Even in old age, she maintained hope of finding her children, or at least learning the truth about their fate. Her 40-year search became her life's purpose, but also took a toll on her health and family. Constant tension, endless disappointment, and financial strain affected every aspect of her existence. Relations with surviving children grew complicated. Mary and John, George Jr., and Sylvia understood the pain but sought normal lives, away from the perpetual tragedy. "Mom lives with ghosts," Marion said. "She loves the missing children more than us, the living." It was unfair, but it reflected a harsh family reality. Jenny was obsessed with the search to the point that everything else came second. George supported her, but grew more skeptical over time. He understood too much time had passed, and the children were likely dead. But he never said so to Jenny. Her faith was the only thing keeping her alive after the tragedy. Destroying that faith meant killing her hope. Jenny Sadr died in 1989 at the age of 83, never learning what happened to her missing children. Until her last days, she believed they were alive somewhere far away. Her 43-year search became a legend, a symbol of a mother's love without limits of time or space. The Sadr story inspired thousands of other parents not to give up searching for missing children. The billboard on the highway stood until 1993, when it was finally removed by highway authorities. But by then, the Sadr family story was immortalized in books, films, and documentaries. Jenny proved that one woman could fight a system of corruption and silence. She never found her children, but she refused to let their disappearance be forgotten. Her legacy lives on in modern organizations supporting families of missing children, in laws demanding thorough investigations, and in society's understanding that every child is precious, and their disappearance must never be silenced. Jenny Sadr was a mother who never gave up. That was her greatness and her tragedy. On the 18th of March, 1968, exactly 23 years and 3 months after the tragedy, the postman delivered an envelope to the Sadr family that changed their lives forever. The letter came from Kentucky with no return address. Inside was a black and white photograph of a young man and a short note written in block letters. "Louis Sadr, I love brother Frankie. Ill boys, a 9051140. The photograph was a professional studio portrait. The man appeared to be about 35 years old with dark hair and well-defined facial features. On the back of the photo, someone had handwritten the name Louis. Jenny held the picture with trembling hands. If it was truly her son Louis, he would now be 31. The age of the man matched, but the most striking detail was the mention of brother Frankie. The Sadr family had no child named Frankie. However, Louis had a favorite teddy bear he called Frankie, a detail known only to close relatives. Who else could have known about Frankie after 23 years of Louis's disappearance? The family immediately showed the photo to relatives and friends who remembered little Louis. Opinions divided. Some saw unmistakable resemblance. Others thought that wishful thinking was blurring their judgment. Older sister Marion was certain. "It's Lewis. Look at the ear shape, the eyebrow curve. That's our brother." Brother John was doubtful. 23 years had passed. It was hard to say how Lewis had changed. This man could be anyone. Jenny hired a photographic expert specializing in age progression. The expert compared young Lewis's photo with the new image and concluded it could very well be the same person. "The main facial proportions match," the specialist said. "Of course, it's impossible to be 100% sure, but the similarity is clear." The mysterious symbols in the note also needed decoding. "Ill boys" might mean ill boys, or be a distorted place name. The number A9051140 resembled a military or prison ID. Jenny immediately contacted the Postal Service to determine the letter's origin. The postmark showed it was sent from Ashland, Kentucky, but that yielded little information. Ashland was a small industrial city near West Virginia, with a population of about 30,000, many employed in metalworking industries. Jenny traveled to Ashland and began her own investigation. She visited every photo studio in town, showing the picture of the supposed Lewis. No photographer recognized the man. She placed ads in local newspapers asking anyone who knew the young man to come forward. Several people responded, but all turned out to be false leads. The most painful encounter was with a woman who claimed the man was her husband. She showed family photos proving he was someone else, just a look-alike. The Sadr family asked the FBI to investigate the letter officially. By then, federal agents knew about the Sadr case, but considered it closed. Agent William Connolly, who handled missing persons cases, agreed to meet with the family. He examined the letter and photo, but delivered a discouraging verdict. "We have no reason to believe this letter is genuine," Connolly said. "It might be a prank or an attempt at extortion. We cannot allocate resources to investigate every anonymous claim." The FBI refused to open an official investigation, but Connolly advised the family to continue searching on their own. He recommended private detectives specializing in long-term missing persons cases. "If your son is alive, after 23 years, he may not remember his past," the agent warned. "Children easily forget traumatic events and adopt new identities." The family hired a private detective agency, Eastern Searches from Charleston, with experience in long-term cases. Detective Robert Stakes took on the task of finding the man from the photo. He used modern methods, fingerprint comparisons if available, military and civilian database searches, social networking, and decoding of the mysterious number A9051140. The number might be a military ID, but Stakes's search in military archives yielded no results. Ill Boys was a dead end as well. The detective examined all possible interpretations, but found no connection to any location or organization. After 3 months of intense searching, Stakes had to admit defeat. "The information in the letter is insufficient for identification," he concluded. "More data is needed." The failure of the official search sparked many theories about the mysterious letter's origin. Each theory had its supporters, but none was proven. The first theory posited that the letter was truly sent by an adult Lewis Sadr. Perhaps he lived under a different name, but retained vague memories of his past. The mention of Teddy Bear Frankie supported this view, but why did Lewis omit a precise address? Maybe he was under control of people who prevented him from contacting his family openly. The letter was a cry for help, a coded message. The second, darker theory claimed the letter came from one of the kidnappers or their descendants, perhaps a criminal seeking to ease a guilty conscience by letting the family know the children were alive. The third theory said the letter was a con crafted by an unknown fraudster. The criminal could have known case details from the press and used them to forge a convincing fake. The fourth was the cruelest. The letter was a sick joke by a mentally ill person taking pleasure in the family's pain. After receiving the first letter, the Sadr family waited for more messages from the supposed Louis. If he truly wanted to reach them, he would have sent more information. But months passed in silence, raising doubts about the first letter's authenticity. In 1970, another anonymous letter arrived, allegedly from another missing child, Betty Sadr. But this letter was clearly a fake, containing factual errors about the family only a stranger could make. The second false letter deepened suspicion about the first. Maybe someone was systematically toying with the family, sending false hope. Jenny continued to believe in the authenticity of the Lewis photo, but other family members grew more skeptical. If the 1968 letter was examined using modern methods, results could have been clearer. DNA testing would have conclusively determined if the man in the photo was related to the Sadrs. In the 60s, such technology did not exist. Computerized face comparisons could have better assessed similarity between young Louis' picture and the new photo. Modern programs factor in aging and produce statistical probabilities of matches. Analysis of the paper, ink, and photographic emulsion could have pinpointed when and where the letter and photo were made. Forensic methods from the 70s were too rudimentary for such analysis. Digital photo processing might have uncovered hidden details, reflections in the eyes or background elements revealing shooting locations. But the most crucial would be handwriting and linguistic analyses. Modern experts could identify regional writing traits, education level, and possible psychological characteristics of the author. The letter from Kentucky was a turning point in the Sadr family's history. It revived fading hopes of finding the children, but also brought fresh disappointments. Jenny kept the photograph of the supposed Louis until the end. She often studied the picture, trying to see her little son's features in the grown man. To the rest of the family, the letter symbolized a cruel world where even a mother's pain becomes a tool for manipulation. The story of the mysterious letter showed how desperate desire to find missing loved ones makes people vulnerable to deception. Families of missing children become targets for fraudsters, mentally ill individuals, and cruel pranksters. But the letter also revealed the power of a mother's love, a love that does not fade even after decades. Jenny was ready to believe in any possibility that her children were alive, even if that hope was vanishingly small. The mystery of the letter from Kentucky was never solved. Perhaps it truly was a cry for help from an adult Louis Sadr, or a cruel joke by an unknown sadist. The truth dissolved in time, leaving only pain and uncertainty in the hearts of those continuing to hope against the odds. By the early 2000s, only grandchildren and great-grandchildren remained from the Sadr family's first generation of missing children. Jenny died in 1989, George in 1969. The surviving children aged and could no longer actively search, but family memory lived on in the next generation. The grandchildren grew up hearing stories of missing uncles and aunts they never met, but whose faces they knew from photographs. Particularly active was Deborah Soderbert, granddaughter of George Jr. In 2005, she created a website dedicated to the family's story and began gathering information online. "My grandmother searched for her children for 40 years, Deborah said. "We have technologies she never had. We must try." The Sadr family website became a hub attracting information from around the globe. People sent photos of elderly individuals who might be grown Sadr children, shared family stories, and proposed new theories. The rise of the Internet opened new possibilities for investigating the case. Enthusiasts from various countries united in virtual groups to search for the missing Sadr children. The forum Unsolved Mysteries dedicated a special section to the Sadr case. Members digitized archival documents, analyzed photos, and constructed genealogical trees of Italian families in West Virginia. Especially active was a user named Joe, who spent years studying connections between local criminal groups and the children's disappearance. His research found that from 1945 to 1950, another 8 children vanished from Italian families in the region. All these disappearances shared common features: absence of bodies, traces of arson, and rapid closure of official investigations. We are dealing not with an isolated crime, but an organized scheme, historian Joe concluded. The Sadr children were part of a larger criminal network. The development of genetic technology opened fundamentally new possibilities for finding missing children. Living Sadr family members submitted DNA samples to international databases. The genetics company 23andMe included the family's profile in its relative search database. If the Sadr children had survived and their descendants underwent genetic testing, the system would have automatically detected a match. Over 15 years of searching revealed several distant relatives who emigrated from Italy at different times, but none led to the missing children. The most promising case was Robert Miller, born in 1987 in Florida. His DNA showed close kinship to the Sadr family, but his age did not match. He was too young to be one of the missing. Further research revealed Robert descended from an Italian immigrant who was a distant relative of George Sadr. His family maintained ties with criminal groups. Modern technology allowed computer models of how the Sadr children would have looked in old age. The program used childhood photographs and aging algorithms. The results were striking. 8-year-old Louis transformed into a 75-year-old man with the family's characteristic facial features. 5-year-old young Jenny became a gray-haired old woman with kind eyes. These images were posted online and on social networks. Thousands compared them to photos of elderly relatives, neighbors, and acquaintances. Occasionally, reports of striking resemblance surfaced. An elderly woman in a California nursing home closely resembled the aged model of young Jenny, but verification proved she was another person. A man in New York resembled the model of Louis, but his well-documented biography showed he was born to Irish immigrants in the Bronx. Every false lead brought disappointment, but the family persevered. Technology continued to advance, and databases expanded. Digitizing archives helped recover documents once thought lost. FBI files contained materials on Italian criminal groups in West Virginia. Declassified papers disclosed federal suspicion that the Sadr children's disappearance was linked to human trafficking but lacked sufficient evidence to prosecute. One particularly interesting report came from Agent Robert Lamson in 1947. The Ragusa group systematically kidnaps children from unstable families. Children are transported across states and sold to childless couples. The scheme is well organized and lucrative. The report mentioned 5 children from Fayetteville without naming them. It was possible they were the Sadr children, but proof was impossible. Documents also revealed Coroner Six received regular payments from an unknown benefactor for 20 years after the Sadr case. Researchers say this was hush money to alter the children's cause of death findings. Coroner Six was bribed to change his conclusion. In the 21st century, the Sadr family launched a systematic search of nursing homes along the eastern seaboard. If the children survived, by then they would have been over 80 years old. Volunteers visited more than 100 nursing homes across 10 states, showing computerized age-progressed images and speaking with elderly residents who might have forgotten their past. Special attention was given to patients with dementia and Alzheimer's who might have forgotten their history. The search was complicated by privacy laws. Many institutions refused to provide resident information without a court order. Still, they managed to inspect over 100 nursing homes in 10 states. Several times they found elderly persons who bore striking resemblance to the Sadr family, but all proved to be false leads. The most painful case occurred in a Baltimore nursing home. 86-year-old Mary bore a striking resemblance to a computer-generated model of what Martha Sadr would look like as an elderly woman. Mary did not remember her childhood and was found wandering the streets in 1950. The family hoped this was Martha, but DNA testing revealed no relation. Another false hope turned into bitter disappointment. The rise of social networks brought millions of people into the search worldwide. The Sadr family Facebook page had more than 100,000 followers. Every anniversary of the tragedy was marked by widespread posts sharing photographs and information about the missing children. Posts were shared thousands of times, reaching an audience of tens of millions. The YouTube channel Unsolved Mysteries released a documentary series about the Sadr case. Each film garnered millions of views and generated new leads from viewers. The podcast True Crimes dedicated an entire season of 8 episodes to the case. The hosts analyzed every aspect, brought in experts, and interviewed the family's descendants. Crowdsourcing platforms helped raise funds for new research. Enthusiasts financed DNA testing, archaeological digs, and private detective work. But mass attention had a downside. The flow of information became so large that verifying every tip was physically impossible. Many valuable clues were lost among false leads. In 2020, researchers made an important discovery in Catholic Church archives. Parish records from St. Anthony's Church in Pittsburgh included documents of 5 baptisms of children named Sadr in 1946. The baptism dates matched the period after the children's disappearance, and the ages roughly corresponded to the missing children. But the records were incomplete. Only names and baptism dates were recorded, with no mention of parents or how the children came to the parish. The parish priest explained that in the 40s, the church often helped refugees and orphans without keeping detailed records. It was possible the children had been brought there and presented as orphans from war-torn Italy. Modern attempts to find descendants of these children failed. The trail was lost amid immigration documents and name changes. Epilogue: A Christmas That Never Ends. In December 2023, it marked 78 years since the disappearance of the 5 Sadr children. Few who remembered the tragedy remain. The last witnesses passed away, taking memories of that terrible night with them. At the site of the burned house, trees have long grown. Nothing now recalls the family who once lived there except a small memorial stone placed by descendants to inform passers-by of the tragedy. The highway billboard was removed in the 90s. The road was widened, a new interchange built. Thousands of drivers pass by daily without knowing that one of the most mysterious dramas in American history played out here. Fayetteville has changed beyond recognition. Old houses were torn down, new neighborhoods arose, and the Italian community merged into the general population. The young no longer know the story that shocked their grandparents and great-grandparents. But the memory of the Sadr children lives on in the internet, documentaries, and books about unsolved crimes. By 2023, only a few people remained who personally knew the Sadr family. 97-year-old Rose McDonald, daughter of bus driver James McDonald, still remembered her father's stories of the strange children he saw on the morning after the fire. Dad was sure to his dying day that he saw the Sadr children alive, Rose recounted. He said he would never forget their frightened faces. Those children were not dead. They were very much alive and very scared. 95-year-old Frank Holmes Jr., son of the local store owner, also retained memories of that day. His father had told him the man who bought food for the children paid with large bills, as if money meant nothing to him. These second-hand accounts supported the theory that the children were kidnapped and lived for some time after the fire. George and Jenny Sadr's grandchildren continue the family tradition of searching for the missing children. They use the latest technologies, genealogical DNA testing, artificial intelligence to analyze photos, and blockchain platforms for data storage and analysis. 35-year-old Michael Sadr, George's great-grandson, works in IT and dedicates his free time to digital investigation. He created an algorithm to analyze death records from 1980 to 2010, looking for people of appropriate age without documented childhoods. If my great-great-grandparents survived and died natural deaths, there should be records, Michael explains. Modern databases uncover connections never seen before. His sister, Sarah Sadr Johnson, became a professional genealogist, specializing in lost family connections. She works with other families of missing children, developing methods to help solve cold cases. After nearly 80 years of investigation, some facts are established. The fire at the Sadr house was arson, not an accident. Too much evidence points to intent: cut wires, removed ladder, disabled cars. The 5 children did not perish in the flames. The total lack of human remains, despite preserved animal bones, is scientifically inexplicable. The disappearance was a planned operation tied to organized crime. The Sadr family became victims because of George's political views and conflict with the local Italian mob. Local authorities deliberately sabotaged the investigation. Corruption, witness intimidation, and document falsification. It was all orchestrated to conceal the truth. The children were kidnapped and possibly sold to other families. Numerous sightings in the months after the tragedy support this theory. Despite a decade of searching, key questions remain unanswered. Did the children survive? How long did they live after being taken? Did they die young or reach old age under different names? Where did they live and who raised them? Did they know their true origins? Are there living descendants, unaware of their roots? Who exactly orchestrated the kidnappings, and what happened to the criminals? Most involved have long since died, taking the secrets to their graves. The Sadr family story changed American society's attitude toward investigating missing children cases. The case revealed how corruption and official indifference can condemn families to decades of suffering. Laws on missing children were tightened. A national database was created, coordination between states improved, and mandatory police protocols introduced. Organizations helping families of missing children regularly cite the Sadr case as proof that searches must never cease. Jenny Sadr's story became a symbol of maternal love, transcending time and space. Her 43 years of searching inspired thousands of other parents never to give up hope. On December 24, 2023, descendants of the Sadr family gathered as usual by the memorial stone. This tradition began immediately after Jenny's death and has continued for 34 years. They bring flowers, light candles, and read the names of the missing children: Betty, Morris, Martha, Lewis, and little Jenny. Each name echoes in the frosty air. Great-grandchildren tell their own children the family story, passing down the memory to the next generation. The little ones do not understand all the details, but remember the names of their lost ancestors. We remember, they say, and we will not forget. In these simple words lies the meaning of 78 years of searching. The Sadr children never came home, but they remain remembered. Their story lives in the hearts of descendants and society's collective memory. Perhaps the truth will never be fully known. Perhaps the mystery of their disappearance will remain unsolved forever. But memory of the 5 children lost on Christmas night, 1945, will live as long as humanity can love and remember. The Christmas fire went out 78 years ago, yet the candle of memory still burns today, illuminating the path for those who continue the search, hoping one day the Sadr children will find their way home. Somewhere in the world, descendants of Betty, Morris, Martha, Lewis, and little Jenny may live. Unaware of their story, but carrying the genes of a family that never ceased seeking them. The Sadr family story is one of love stronger than death, memory more powerful than time, and hope greater than despair. It is a lesson for all of us that some battles are worth fighting even when victory seems impossible. The Sadr children vanished in fire, but their memory became an eternal flame, warming the hearts of all who believe in the power of human love. Thank you for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments.